Hey guys, the name's Hedrediction, I'm in Plague, and this is a story that started out as a means for one man to prove a point to another man, yet it ended up as a deep dive into one of Dead by Daylight's core mechanics that somehow flew under the radar of the entirety of the player base for the entirety of Dead by Daylight's lifespan. And to answer the question in the title of the video, yes, several killers in the game can use the purple cut coin as their third add-on. If you just want to know why, who and how can do that, skip to the timecode I'm showing on the screen. But if you want to know the story that made Odzarva laugh, just continue watching. I promise you, it's quite fun. And also, don't mind my voice, I'm sick a bit. So let's get into the story. How it all began. You might remember that a couple days ago Odzarva has released a tier list, a 9.5-hour video tier listing every single add-on for every single killer. But I have a problem with it. I'm in Plague, as I've already stated, and I don't like the fact that from iteration to iteration Odzarva constantly puts yellow apple one place above the green ashen apple. For the same reason, I put them in reverse. And I've put out quite a harsh comment explaining the reasons why that is kind of incorrect. And after that, I went out to collect some data to prove my point graphically. To cut to the chase, it turns out that my previous statement was in fact incorrect. I've stated something that wasn't factual. I felt like a failure. But in doing that, I've actually seen something interesting. Let me show you our findings. My original statement was that if you use Ashen Apple, you will get an additional pool of devotion into a nice spot even on Plague's worst maps, like backwater swamps. And to test that, myself and my friend Kintaro, went to do several spawn tests on backwater swamp, specifically Grim Pantry. First we did 10 loads, 10 spawns with just normal Plague, then with Ashen Apple, and here's what we found. Yeah, definitely the spawns were just absurdly bad for the normal 6 pools of devotion. That's just classical Plague spawns. You can simply get one normal pool of devotion, and then everything else will be trash, everything else will be in the corners of the map, on the edges. Even worse, it can be somewhere around... Is it called piers in English? Probably not, but I guess you understand. The terrible two-story structure on both backwater maps. This terrible thing. The pool that spawns there is always worse than the edge map. So, on all 10 spawns, we could see the evenly terrible distribution, no matter what we tried. Then we took the Ashen Apple, and while on the one hand the spawns were a little bit better, and you can see that from comparing the first 10 spawns to the second 10 spawns, which I will show you in a minute. We could also see one kinda interesting thing. Out of the 10 times we loaded into the map with the Ashen Apple, we had 2 times where we had 6 out of 7 pools of devotion spawn on the edges of the map. For the entirety of my time playing Plague, I believed that this was impossible with Ashen Apple, and this destroyed my argument to Odzarva with concrete argumentation. I was done and buried. However, this birthed a theory for me. What if this situation means that Plague is only guaranteed one good spawn for the pool of devotion, one spawn that is not edge map, and everything else is completely random? There was a way to test that. Plague has this stupid, extremely weak, or at least I thought that, add-on called the Prophylactic Amulet, which removes 2 pools of devotion. And theoretically, I've actually never really used it. This add-on does the following. It removes 2 pools of devotion, and on Plague's worst maps, you can get 4 pools on the worst possible spots. So we went and tested that amulet 10 times on Grim Pantry. As you can see from these 10 layouts, we never got that layout. You can always have 1 pool of devotion that is guaranteed to not be on the edges of the maps. Well, that was unexpected, that was interesting, and that led me a bit further. We now had to test the coin theory. But where did this coin theory even come from? So, the English YouTube channel isn't actually my main channel. My main channel is in Russian, and there my most successful content is deep dive killer guides. I'm right now in the process of adapting some of them to English channel. That takes time. I'm sick, you hear my voice, that's not effective, but that's not the point. The point is that in these guides I try to break down killer power mechanics, to tell people, to explain to people how these powers actually work. And approximately a year ago I tried to do that with Plague as well. She's got an extremely complicated power. I still don't know exactly how that power works. I still have a few things to figure out there, but one mistake I did there was to expect her fountains to spawn in the same locations as totems. That was incorrect. And I figured that out later when I've been working on the Pyramid Head guide. Their Russian competitive player Night Fury guided me into the right direction by telling me that Pyramid Head uses the chest spawns for his power. I believe that Pyramid Head mains know that very well. His Pyramid Head's spawn point logic is extremely simple. His cages just search for the furthest available chest spawn to place the cage when it is used. And that's basically it. And at that moment, an idea came to my mind. What if the Plague uses the same logic? At that moment, I thought, what if we tested Plague with coins? Both with reduction of chests on the map and with the increase of chests. But the thought didn't go any further. Until a few days ago. So when we looked at all the previous tests, out of which we had like the 30 I've showed you already, and we've done a couple more, like 15 more uploads on the map, we could see one simple thing. We've never had a spawn in main. And in main there is always a spawn point for the chest that is always occupied. On the Green Pantry there is always a chest in main. And in all of our 30 spawns there was a chest. So what would happen if we used a purple cut coin? That coin should remove the chest in main. Well, let me just show you the results of our testings. Here are the 5 times that we lowered onto Grim Pantry with the cut coin. And on all of them, you can see that we got ourselves a guaranteed pool of devotion in the main building where it wasn't supposed to be placed. This was the moment where we were joined by another Plague main, Forsaken, who have been communicating all of this story from the get-go, but around the 6, if I recall correctly, yeah, around 6 pools of devotion out of 7, he has joined us, and this happened when he was with us already. So this was something he has seen live, and this was incredible. We finally figured out that there was a way to successfully manipulate Plague's spawns. But we still couldn't figure out why. So, next up we had to test if the yellow scratched coin that removes only one chest would affect the spawns for Plague's pools. It didn't. At all. Nothing changed compared to the normal spawns. Zero. Nada. Nothing. And you can see that by looking at the graphics. So the next question was, would the increase in chest numbers affect the spawn points? We could do that in two different ways. First one, by affecting it from the killer side, actually in three ways. Using the perk Hoarder, that increases the number of chests by 2. Second is through survivors, by using the shiny coins and also the yellow coins, which increase by 1 and 2 chests. And the third one by combining all of them. And all of that we actually did. Funnily enough, no matter how much chests you put on the map, they do not affect the spawn logic for killer objects. And what's even more interesting, we tested that on Plague, we could find all of the chests, all 13 of them, and we also could find all 7 of the pools if we used Ash and Apple. But then, you know, there are much more killers in the game than Plague. That's not only Plague who's affected by the chest spawns. And 2 of the killers have this logic combined with the logic of Gen spawn, which are the Onryo and the new Xenomorph. The alien is also affected by that stuff! And so we went out and tested the coin logic with the alien. And alien also showed us that his spawn points are not affected by any number of chests appearing on the map. And this concluded our testing. This has told us everything we needed to know about the logic of chests and killer chest-like objects, which is how I will call all of these things from now on. And this is the time to explain the baseline mechanics, and after that we'll talk how to abuse this stuff if you even can. And now it's actually time to talk about the mechanics. What did we actually discover? How does this all line up? At this moment, I can see the following structure. That's just the things that I've stated to Odzdara in our discussion. First, we have 3 types of chests in the game. First is basement or secret chest, then obligatory chest, and finally the random chest. Basement or secret chests exist on every map in the game. Well, basement chests exist on every map in the game, because on every map there is always a basement, and there's always a chest in the basement. And secret chests exist on 2 maps in the game. Those are Midwich and Nostromo, if I recall correctly. Then, obligatory chests exist on most maps in the game, and usually they exist somewhere in the main building, and sometimes somewhere else near the main building. The prime example is the Ormond chest. Finally, random chests are all other chests. Second, scratched coin removes random chests, and only them. Cut coin, however, the purple offering, removes both random and obligatory chests, but it does not remove basement and secret chests. So with purple coin we can definitely affect the obligatory chests. And if an obligatory chest, that's the third one, has been removed via the cut coin, the empty spawn point has to be filled if it is possible to be filled. And with what can this spawn point can be filled? There are 2 options. First one is if there is a way to put a usual chest there. This will be the priority way. That means that someone should have brought a coin offering on the survivor side, or the killer should have brought a hoarder. However, there is a second way, which is the interesting for us. If a killer power has a chest-like object, one should be placed in the place of the obligatory chest. This is the reason as to why when you remove an obligatory chest in Grim Pantry, a plague pool appears there. And finally, why does the increase in the amount of chests on the maps not affect spawn points in any way? That comes from the fourth point. Random chests do not have any spawn priority whatsoever when compared to chests like killer objects. These are the 4 rules that I have deduced from all of our testing. And that actually explains a lot. And now the question is, to which killers you can use this, and on which maps this may be useful. Let's talk about that, because that's actually why you're here. Now it's time to talk about the killers. First things first, which killers are affected by the chest system. There are 9 of them in the game. All of this started with Freddy. His clocks use the chest spawns to place themselves. Next up was Pig, her boxes do the exact same thing. What the... no, it doesn't matter. The third up is the Plague, that's obvious, we started with her. After that is the Executioner, we've already talked about him. Next up is the Nemesis. After him comes the Onryo, she's quite interesting, we'll talk about her a bit later. Then comes the Mastermind, the Singularity, and the latest addition to Dead by Daylight, as already mentioned, the Xenomorph, also uses the same exact system. So, that's it. That's almost the third of the killers in the game. But now, the next question is, do all of them use this system to their benefit? Can even all of them use it to their benefit, and maybe some of them shouldn't even try to use it, or they'll hurt themselves? Well, let's go from the most benefit to the least benefits, and form a tier list here. The S tier, funnily enough, is the newest addition, Alien. I find that incredibly funny that one of the oldest mechanics in Dead by Daylight is the most efficiently abusable on the newest killer in the game. You see, the idea here is that the Xenomorph doesn't care about the way the chests spawn. It doesn't care that there's an obligatory chest and that there's a random chest. What's important is that there is a generator and there are the closest spawn points of the chests to that generator. And what the Xenomorph wants is for all of those spawn points to be empty, for his control stations to be placed as close as possible to the gens. And the most effective way to achieve that would be to pick Cut Coin, to remove all of the chests except for the basement one. But even if you pick the Scratched Coin, you will remove one of the chests and therefore improve the spawns for yourself. So this killer can use even the Scratched Coin. And spoiler alert, Alien is one of the 2 killers in the game that will benefit from the Scratched Coin. All others will need the Cut Coin. This is incredible, I've already tried it and I love it. Next up come the 2 killers that I still cannot actually move away from one another. They feel incredibly close in terms of how efficiently they can use this system to their benefit. That's Plague and the Onryo. I'll start with Plague for the simple reason I've tested everything on her from the get-go. So, Plague requires the Cut Coin. She doesn't care about the random chest. She needs herself the obligatory spawn on those maps where this spawn exists. Because usually, if this spawn exists, this map isn't really that great for her. It's either an incredibly huge map, like Ormont, or just a terrible map like Grim Pantry, where her spawns are usually edge map and she wants one fountain she can rely on. If she can make her spawns more reliable, then she can make her power more reliable. And this is awesome, this is great, this is perfect. So the Cut Coin is the third add-on for her and quite powerful at that. So yeah, she can, and she probably should abuse that system. I would highly recommend that you try it. With Onryo, the system is much more interesting, and I would argue it's much more ambiguous. The Onryo, for the similar reasons as the Xenomorph, can use that system with the scratched coin as well as the cut coin. However, the ambiguity comes from the fact that I'm not really sure that you want your spawns to look like they can with these coins. On certain maps, you will get extremely weird TVs. And will this always work to your benefit? That's a thing to consider. For instance, on Temple of Purgation, which you cannot get onto right now, because it's just kill switched in the game, there is an obligatory chest in the basement of the main building. I mean, not the basement, but the map basement. And it is locked until the main building gen is done, and it is a powerful gen to defend. And until the gen is done, the TV is blocked. And maybe for the Onryo this is great. That's a TV that survivors cannot use, but she cannot do that as well. And this sentiment also works for the Xenomorph, and also works for the Plague. And same thing goes for Macmillan Estate, Ironworks of Misery. There is a guaranteed, there is an obligatory chest on the second floor of the main building on the Ironworks of Misery. And is that a good place for the TV? I don't know. So I'm not sure that Onryo will always have the benefits, will always reap the benefit from that system. Therefore, you need to consider that. But still, most of the times I'm sure she will, and I would definitely try that at least a couple dozen times if I could. Next up, I believe, is Pig. For Pig, it's incredibly complicated, but right now I'm doing a win streak on Pig Live, twitch.com/hydroaddiction, go watch it, a bit of PR here, and we've been moderately successful, a win streak of 17 right now, and in 8 of those games I've used the cut coin. And for Pig, it feels like there's never a bad thing from the cut coin. It may not always give you something really nice, but it always gives you something at least. On some maps, like the Temple of Purgation, like the Macmillan Estate, like Ironworks of Misery, one of your 5 boxes will be either completely blocked for survivors, or be placed as awkward as possible, leaving you with either a extremely stupid survivor that wants to go to a place they shouldn't be going to, or leaving you with 4 smarter survivors that you can easily keep track of because they only have 4 boxes to go to, basically making you a pig before she was given 5 boxes, which is nice, which is really nice in my experience. And in other situations, this takes one of your boxes and places it into an extremely important area, like the Borgo main building. And you have an important gen, and 1 meter from that gen, there is a big box. And that's also nice, because that gives you 2 objects you want to keep track of, making this zone a double danger for survivors. And on other occasions, that just makes several boxes appear so close to each other and to gens that you have a perfect ability to keep an incredibly strong 3 gen. And all of this adds up to quite a significant effect in my experience. But this experience is only 8 games. After that, I've lost the coins and I wasn't able to try any more. And also, the pig can only use the cut coin. Moving on, I believe that the remaining killers can only reap a small benefit. The next one is probably the Mastermind, Wesker. On some occasions, he will be able to place his chests in awkward positions for survivors, like block one of them on Temple of Purgation, put one of them incredibly high. On other occasions, he will make survivors go to extremely hot spots, and I'm really not that sure that's what a survivor wants against a Wesker, is to go to a hot gen to use a vaccine. And for Wesker, that's something that you have to do a lot. Same sentiment goes for the Nemesis. However, Nemesis vaccines are not as often used in the games, just for the simple reason there are 4 of them instead of fucking 12. And that's a big difference. Also, there are only 4 boxes, so much less spawn points are used throughout the match. So the benefit for the Nemesis is, I believe, almost negligible. But at least something can be reaped from that. Also, these 2 killers can only use the cut coin even if they want to. The next 2 killers cannot use anything, and these are the Nightmare, Freddy, and the Executioner, Pyramid Head. For Freddy, the reasoning is quite simple. Survivors always get the furthest clock possible, and when there is an obligatory chest on the map, well, I mean, it's never the furthest chests on the map. That's never an edge map chest. You might even hurt yourself. You don't want that. That's not something you want to do. That's not something you need to do. And in any way, why would you want to affect the clock location as Freddy? I just don't see any benefit to doing that. And with the Pyramid Head, the logic is basically almost the same. Maybe this guy can have some benefit to it. By using either cut coin or scratched coin, this guy can remove a random chest that spawns on the edge of the map and have another edge location where his cage can go. But in my experience as Pyramid Head, you don't really want to have multiple possible locations for your cages. If anything, Pyramid Head would probably want to pick Hoarder and make survivors bring coins to block as much possible spawns as it is as he can, to have a reliable spot for the cage to go and to find it every time. So you don't want to use the coin there. But if you do, this will not affect your efficiency in any way, most likely. Finally, which is the killer that can and will lose something by using the coin? This is the same killer that I believe was the grave mistake to release. And I'm not talking about School Merchant, but she was as well. That's the Singularity. Singularity shouldn't use the cut coin in any situation. They cannot use scratched coin and shouldn't use the cut coin. And the reasoning is pretty simple. While on some maps, like the aforementioned Temple of Purgation, the Macmillan State, the positioning of the obligatory chest is extremely awkward, on most maps where there is an obligatory chest, it is in an extremely busy area. Take the Macmillans, most of them, take the Auto Heavens, take the farms, take the Borgo, take the Toba Landing. You don't want to give survivors a constant source of countering your power near an important place of the map. You just don't want to do that. On some of those maps, like Borgo for instance, you will place your own counter in the middle of the map. And this sounds terrible. Why would you want to do that? I personally wouldn't want to do that. And that's all with the killers. At the moment, no other killer in the game uses that logic. And we are moving to the last part. Which maps have an obligatory chest spawn? Because when I started testing, it turned out that several maps that I thought did have such chest turned out to not have it. This will just be a fast part with a list, so let's get straight into it. Finally, for the last part of this video, which I'm even recording on the next day. Which maps do have the obligatory chest? There are a total of 18 maps of this kind. 5 of the Macmillan maps, basically all of them, 2 of the Coldwind maps, Torment Creek and Thompson House, 2 of the Outer Heaven maps, Wretched Shop and Blood Lodge, then only 1 of the Kratos Brand maps, Disturbed Ward, Temple of Purgation on the Red Forest, both Backwater maps, Mount Ormond, Garden of Joy, Decimated Borgo, and both space maps, Toba Landing and Nostromo Wreckage. And there are actually 3 caveats here. First one is that Garden of Joy is kinda weird. Garden of Joy being Garden of Joy is messing up here. It does have an obligatory chest in the main building in this weird room that looks like a balcony. But what's interesting is that for the Alien and the Onryo, there is a dedicated spawn point for their object that is located on the downstairs floor right behind the generator on the 2nd floor of the main building. So even if you remove the chest in the main building, you won't get yourself a better spawn point for your object. However, if you do that with Wesker, with Plague, with Singularity, you will get yourself a nice spawn point. So with Plague, that will work. I've tested that, I'm showing it to you right now. Garden of Joy! I love this map. And the Decimated Borgo, the second caveat, is much more interesting. It turns out that this map actually has 2 places for the obligatory chest. One in the main building and the other one in the small hut right next to it, attached to it. And the obligatory chest can spawn on either of these positions. And what's more interesting, both of these positions can be used simultaneously. So it is entirely possible that your obligatory chest spawns inside the main building and the killer object is on the 1st floor, and the other way around. However, if you use the coin and remove the chest entirely, your object will spawn on the 2nd floor if there is a gen, and we are talking about the Onryo and the Alien. With Plague, Wesker, it's not as mandatory. This is just plain interesting. Finally, the last caveat. The fact that there's only 18 maps isn't that bad actually, because Dead by Daylight's way of giving you maps, how is it called in Dead by Daylight wiki, the map selector works in weird ways. Not every map is equal in the selector. For instance, all 5 of the Bethlehem maps, all of the preschools, combined have the same chance of appearing as each of the Macmillan maps individually. So a chance of you getting one of the Macmillan maps is 5 times higher than getting any of the Bethlehem maps. So in total, the overall chance of you going on one of these 18 maps is higher than 50%. Therefore, if you are using a coin, with quite a high chance, you will benefit from it, if you are using it on the right killer. Also add to that the fact that not every killer, again, Alien, Onryo, will benefit only from the obligatory chests, and also maps like Coldwind, Macmillan, Outer Heaven are maps on which survivors like to send you. And with that said, this video is over. If you watched it for the whole duration up to this point, that's impressive, my guys. I'm Ro, and thank you so much for for that. I'll see you in the next one, and I hope you liked the video. For now, bye.